Got the shaft all put back into this lower throttle housing, and it appears to be working pretty nicely. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's much tighter than it was, and I think it'll keep a vacuum out. I did notice when I put this thing back together that you're not going to be able to see it in this video, but these little baffle plates have a little notch right up here in this ridge and a little notch right here, and those notches need to correspond to the holes that come through for these two little idle adjustment screws, because those notches are what would clear the very end of that screw if it were pushed all the way in. So you just want to be careful, especially since I can tell I got this one in backwards. Just want to be careful when you put those in that there is sort of a special way. On some of these carburetors, the throttle plates are actually the edge. Now you can probably see this see that little nick out of that. On some of these, the edge is actually beveled, but on these plates they're not. So just want to put them in there, and what I like to do is move them around until I get it to where it's seating in there just like it's supposed to, and then I put the screws in and tighten them down. I'm going to just put a couple of screws in here to hold this right now, because these screws are all fouled up from getting them out, and I ordered some new screws, so I'm going to put nice new screws in once they get here in a couple of days. So these are just here to hold it. So I think I'm going to go ahead and finish putting this thing back together. So the first thing I did, I got the shaft in there. That's all working nicely. I've got the two idle jet screws back in. I put them in till they bottomed out and backed them out a turn. One of the books said back them out 2 or 3 turns, but I think a turn's close enough, and then we'll get it idling, and then we'll worry about that. The next thing is to put there's a little spring in here that slides on that piece there, and this little thingamajigger here has to go on top of that, and that's what helps make that work. Then this thing sits on top of it with the cup up, and then this has to go down. I'm gonna have to find some glasses. So they're right here. So, and then this has to go down in there to sit on top of that, just like so. That all seems to be working properly. And then I'm gonna put this back on here, and I think this is keyed. Yes. That goes on there like that. There's a little tiny lock washer and an even tinier nut that holds this little plate on. Doing that like that and tightening it down. Alright, so that seems to be working the way it's supposed to there. And that little spring comes back up in there. And in this piece, if you set this thing where the 2 dots, there's 3 little rivets, the 2 dots at the top, the pin slice is horizontal, the spring goes over here in the 330 position. And I noted that in the photograph when I took it apart. There's a little gasket goes on here. So this little spring has to hook into let's see, I index this right there. Okay, and then there's 3 little clips that bolt in. These have a downside that hook into these grooves. So I've got all 3 of these to go on here. And I talked to John, super helpful this morning, helped me figure out how to solve this other shaft problem. I asked him how this worked, and this is actually a heat riser. So that spring is a thermo elastic spring, and the heat comes off the manifold, exhaust manifold, in a blind, what he called a blind plug. Just makes heat. It doesn't take exhaust gas, it's just taking heated gas, and it pushes it up into this little automatic choke. And when it does, that automatic choke, then that spring, when it starts getting hot, relaxes and lets those choke valves open back up. Okay, so I think we got that put back together. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop this little tiny check valve ball down in the bottom of this hole. Okay, and then this piece, I've got the little check valve screw, the gasket, that piece, another little fiber washer, and then this screw. Yeah, shit! I just realized I put the ball in the wrong hole. It was in this little hole, and then this screws down onto here. Okay, get that in place, just tighten it firmly. Next I'm going to put this, I think this is some kind of bypass jet, and it has a little fiber washer on that. And I'm going to drop it down in there. These are all new parts, by the way, that came in the kit. Okay, that little deal's doing good. And then I've already spent a little effort getting this float valve set up correctly. That this little float valve, when it goes in here, oh, I gotta get the, here's the needle, the float valve needle. Again, it's new. And this one has a hole in it, and it had 2 of these little tiny like clips, but neither of them fit this float. And so I went back to the original one. In the original one, the float valve, the little pin, does not have a hole in it. So I don't think this is actually supposed to have a clip on it. This little pin goes in this float. And then it sits right down in this groove. Maybe. So when that thing is in there as far as it goes, now my float looks like it's too low. the way I measured this is I got a flat ruler that starts from the top. And when this thing is at the point where it's going to stop the flow, it's supposed to be 730 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now it's 9:30 seconds. So I'm going to have to adjust this float back up a little bit higher. Originally it was evidently supposed to be 3/16, but that was with leaded gasoline, which had a higher density. And from what I read, with the new float, new gasoline that's not as high as density, it needs to be just a little bit 1/32 lower. Over my ruler and pulling that up till it makes contact, and then setting the ruler down, and then I can read it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Still at about 8, so I'm still just, let me try that again. There we go. Didn't have a good reading. So that's right at 7:30 seconds. So I think we're good to go on that. There is a little gasket on that deal. Jon at the Carburetor Shop said don't over tighten these fittings, so I'm not over tightening the fittings. And I think the next thing I can do, while it's kind of easy, is flip this thing over and put these two little cap screws in there. Both of those have a little flat copper washer. I'll put that in there. I'm going to just snug these up because I don't have a big screwdriver on my table. So I'm just going to snug those up. And I got to get this little crazy spring in here, and I got no idea how to do that. This definitely wants to get pushed down and then pushed underneath this little catch. Get it? Okay, it just popped right in there. Okay, so I think at this point it's time to see if we can't mate up the top half. So this is the big check ball. It goes down in the hole where the accelerator pump goes. There's a little hole in there for it. That's going to sit on there just like that. Match up to those holes there. And we're going to have to take this accelerator pump in the kit. The accelerator pump, and I'm going to have to go get a little bit of oil. The accelerator pump is about 1/4 of an inch longer than the one that's in it. But again, Helpful Jon said that this is the correct size, and someone probably just replaced it with a shorter one along the route. So I'm going to go get some oil and put on this little accelerator pump before I stick it in there. All right, I'm back. Got some oil, and I'm going to dab a little oil. On this accelerator pump. I assume that just makes that leather swell up a little bit. Handy dandy washer just fell down in there. to reinsert the check ball. It's like the big end goes down and the little end is supposed to clip up onto the bottom of that, like that. Check valve still in there. And I need to be putting this little tag back on here. Okay, now we're going to put this back on there, which had a tension spring on the inside. And remembering that this is a left-handed threaded operation. Do not know why. I can see why Jon at the Carburetor Shop was correct that he said this needs to make sure it bottoms out. And when it bottoms out, this should be about 2/3 of the throttle linkage. I have to get the throttle linkage on here, but that other accelerator pump, if it were a 1/4 inch shorter, it would not bottom out. So that accelerator pump was too short. This one, this old one in the bag, too short. It wouldn't have bottomed out, and I don't think that would have let it work right. So, interesting. Okay, now we can flip this upside down. These are not symmetrical, so that has to go that way. This has to go this way. Has to go this way. And God, I think the 2 long screws went in the middle. And the 2 short screws went on the outside. Okay, I want to make sure that I can still get these linkages on here. Okay, now I can't get this up without that piece being in there. Kit came with a bunch of fancy cotter pins. Okay. Okay, it's all right. Now, just gotta remember how to get this piece on. So it looks like it was in the top hole. And he said you want that to be in the bottomed out at about 2/3 down. So 2/3 is about right there. Two-thirds is about right there. Okay, so this is too far. So this bottoms out right there. I don't know if you can see this. This bottoms out there, yet the throttle is at full position. So we really want that to bottom out right about there. And then it just goes with the rest of the way. So in order to make that bottom out there, I think I need to lengthen it. I can't tell if I need to lengthen it or shorten it. I'll try lengthening it first. Yeah, I'll see what it's doing. I need to lengthen it just a little bit more. Just a shade more. So it looks like someone had shortened this thing up when they put the wrong accelerator pump in there. And that appears to be working the way it's supposed to right there. Okay. So I need to put the cotter pins in these. Something got hung up there. Okay, appears to all be working. And I got these mounting studs parkerized up. So there you have it. Took about an hour to tear it down, hour and a half to clean everything up, and about 2 hours to rebuild this shaft and then reassemble this carburetor today. Maybe 2.5. So it now is pretty much the way it would have come from the factory. With the proper date code on it, the Bendix Stromberg model WW, manufactured in Eclipse Machine Division, Albany. I think that says Albany. Can't really quite read it, but there you go. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, learned anything from it, be sure and subscribe. Got 200 subscribers. I just need about 800 more to go. Have a good day.